All right, my clock shows 9 a.m., so we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Jeff Hunter. I work for VMware in the technical marketing group at VMware, based out of Palo Alto, California in the USA. And you're probably wondering, what is technical marketing? Kind of sounds like an oxymoron, or how does technical and marketing go together? But actually I focus more on the technical aspect, which is what we're going to do today. We're going to do a technical walkthrough, so I encourage you to do the same. Forget the marketing part of that, and just understand that we focus on the technical details of various products. Now, my focus is in the business continuity and disaster recovery space, so I spend time with products such as vSphere Data Protection Advanced, also things like Site Recovery Manager, vSphere Replication, HA, FT, pretty much anything that has to do with keeping virtual machines up and running in your environments out there. So that is my focus at VMware in the technical marketing group. As I mentioned just a moment ago, we are going to focus on backup and recovery with a brand new product here that we just recently announced a few days ago, and that's the latest version of vSphere Data Protection Advanced. We have revved this up to version 5.5. And even though it is a dot release, the previous version was 5.1. When we go to 5.5, this is actually a very significant release. We just wanted to make sure that we lined the numbers up with the vSphere release to keep things nice and simple, which is what we're trying to be all about at VMware, keeping things simple. So let's go ahead and dig into it just a little bit. What I'm going to do as far as the agenda today is start with introducing the product with a couple of slides. But my goal is to spend most of the time actually showing a live demo. So we'll switch to that in just a moment, but I wanted to give you an overview first to give you an idea of what this product is capable of, and then we'll dig into the live demonstration. So as I mentioned just a moment ago, we're all about trying to keep things simple at VMware, and that's exactly what this product does for backup and recovery. It's very easy to deploy. It's actually a single virtual appliance. So we do not have to deploy multiple virtual machines and install Windows and patch Windows and continue to patch Windows after that, and then install backup and recovery software on top of that, and so on and so forth. One virtual appliance, it's Linux-based by default. It's deployed with 4 virtual CPUs and 4 gigs of memory, and it is responsible for doing all of the work that a backup solution would do. So it does backup recovery, file level restore, image level restore, application restore, the whole gamut there. It is based on EMC Avamar, and that is really one of the secret sauces here in this particular product is it's very simple to deploy, but yet we're deploying an enterprise class backup and recovery solution here. If you've ever deployed EMC Avamar before, it is not the easiest solution to deploy out there. And what we've done is we've taken something as robust and as mature and well proven in the industry as Avamar, and we've made it very simple to deploy and very simple to manage. As a matter of fact, creating a backup job, for example, takes maybe about 8 or 10 mouse clicks, and that's about it, and I'll certainly show you that here in just a moment. The other nice thing about the fact that Avamar is inside of this appliance is the deduplication algorithm that is used. Avamar has one of the most efficient, if not the most efficient, deduplication technologies out there. For example, when you run your first few backups with Avamar or VDP Advanced, you will find that the deduplication rate is right around maybe 50 or 60% initially when you deploy it and first start doing backups. Then, of course, as you add more virtual machines, continue to do backups and so forth, you will see the efficiency get even better and better and better. And that is because it does variable length segment deduplication as opposed to a fixed length segment deduplication. That's a mouthful there. Anyway, long story short, you'll see 80, 90%, maybe even more than that when it comes to deduplication efficiency after you've had VDP Advanced running out there for a while. So you'll be able to back up lots of virtual machines, but it's not going to require lots of storage to store that backup data because of that deduplication algorithm. Some new things, quite a few new things that we have added to VDP Advanced. One of the items that we heard most from customers is the fact that there's no easy way to move backup data off-site. There was no way to back up to tape, for example, no way to replicate that data, no easy way to replicate the appliance itself. So what we've decided to do is we've added replication to VDP Advanced. Okay? Some folks are probably asking, why did we not do tape support there? And in our opinion, tape is a legacy solution. It's cumbersome, it's not as reliable, and in some cases not as secure. I'm sure you've read in the headlines at some point, either here in Europe or maybe in the United States or elsewhere, where backup tapes were lost, and at that point we had to buy a whole bunch of credit insurance policies, or the company that lost the tape, I should say, had to buy a whole bunch of credit protection policies for their customers because social security numbers or other important data were on those tapes. So by using replication, we think that is more efficient. We don't have to mess with tapes anymore. And it's more secure as well because this data is encrypted when we replicate between appliances. We can replicate from one VDP Advanced appliance to another, or we can replicate from VDP Advanced to EMC Avamar as well. So if you're a larger customer and you have EMC Avamar in the environment, that can be a replication target too. We also have integration with EMC Data Domain. That's another nice feature here if you're looking to grow the scale and performance of VDP Advanced. For example, maybe you want to deploy multiple VDP Advanced appliances out there, but you still want to get the benefit of global deduplication across all of those backups. You can simply deploy multiple VDP appliances, up to 10 per vCenter server, and those can all use the same data domain appliance as the backup target, thus getting that global deduplication across all of your backups in the environment. VDP Advanced also supports data domain boost. Not all backup products out there do. VDP Advanced does support data domain boost. That will increase the throughput. It will dedupe some of that data before it's sent to your backup target, which is going to reduce the amount of network utilization that you have in the environment as well. Some other things I'll mention here too is that VDP, of course, can do agentless backup. And if you talk to most of the backup experts out there, they will agree that for most virtual machines, most applications, it's okay to back up these virtual machines and applications without the need for an application agent inside of the VM. However, there are a few cases where it does make sense to have an agent. And in that particular case, we have some of those agents out there. For SQL Server Exchange, we had those with 5.1, and now we've added support for SharePoint as well. And what these agents bring to the table are more granular backup capabilities. For example, I can pick and choose individual databases within my SQL Server to back up. For example, maybe I don't want to back up the master database. Maybe I just want to back up the database that has all of my customer information in it. And that is something you can do with VDP Advanced. VDP Advanced also utilizes change block tracking, just as many of the other backup and recovery solutions out there. But one of the unique things about VDP Advanced is not only does it use it for backup, but change block tracking is also used for restore as well, when you're restoring a VM to its original location. I guess another way of putting that is when you are rolling back a virtual machine to a previous point in time. Maybe there was corruption, or maybe the wrong data was entered into the appliance, or into your VM, your application in other words, and you want to roll that backward to a previous point in time. What VDP Advanced will do is it will evaluate the blocks that have changed since the current version of the appliance back to that restore point, and it will restore only those changed blocks. So you could have a very large virtual machine that you need to roll back, let's say a ½ terabyte, for example, but if there's only maybe 100 gig or a few hundred gig of data that has changed since that restore point that you want to roll back to, it's only going to take a few minutes because we're only going to restore those changed blocks back to that restore point. So very efficient when you're restoring to original location. Another feature we've added to the agents within VDP Advanced specific to Exchange is the ability to do individual mailbox restore. So not only can we pick and choose databases from that particular application to back up and restore, but now we can also select individual mailboxes to restore back to Exchange. So very granular capabilities there with that particular agent. Again, most VMs are okay without agents, but there are a few, such as these Tier 1 Microsoft applications that require agents, and we have included those with VDP Advanced. There is no additional charge for these agents. They are included, as many as you want to deploy out there. Again, we're keeping things nice and simple. Another new feature we've added here too, the list goes on. We've added the ability to do automated backup verification. As you know, the backups are great only if they can be restored. And the only sure way to know that a backup can be restored is if you actually perform a restore rehearsal from time to time. So actually restore a virtual machine, make sure it boots, make sure the application comes up and so forth. With automated backup verification, we do exactly that, only it can be scheduled and automated this way. So perhaps once per week, there's a very important virtual machine that you want to actually restore back to a sandbox environment, so it's disconnected from the network as not to interfere with production. You can schedule that job to run once a day, once a week, once a month, whatever makes sense for your environment, and it will actually restore the VM. It will listen for VMware tools heartbeats, so we know that the guest OS is up and running. And optionally, you can put a script in there as well if you want to run, let's say, a SQL query, for example, against a database out there to verify that even the application is running properly as well. Once that verification has been complete, VDP Advanced will then tear down that virtual machine and basically free that space up for the next time we need to run that job once again. Last but not least, we have file level restore. I mentioned that just a moment ago, so you can pick and choose individual files to restore, or folders if you want to. One of the other things we've added there, you can see the last new icon there, is also the ability to do direct-to-host emergency restore. With previous versions of VDP and VDP Advanced, you were not able to do a restore unless vCenter was online. This, of course, made it very difficult to use VDP to back up vCenter, because how would you restore it if vCenter is offline? Now we can do a direct-to-host restore without vCenter being there. That way we can use VDP Advanced to back up vCenter, and again, if it goes down, we can restore it directly to the host using this web interface. Question here.
Is the same valid for VDP without Advanced?
Yeah, the question was, is it the same for VDP and VDP Advanced? And the answer to that is yes. That direct-to-host emergency restore is included in both versions, and I'll actually spend just a moment on that too. There are two versions of VDP. There is VDP that is included with vSphere, so we consider that a feature of vSphere. It's included with Essentials Plus and higher at no additional charge. So if you already have vSphere 5.1 or higher, Essentials Plus or higher, then you have the ability to test drive this product using the included VDP that comes with vSphere. If you want to use some of the additional functionalities, such as replication between appliances, the agents, more capacity, data domain support, and so forth, that is where you would upgrade to VDP Advanced, which can be done in place. So maybe you want to test drive VDP to start with, and if you like what you see, you can actually apply a license key to that VDP appliance, which will then enable the VDP Advanced functionality. Okay? As far as licensing, again, we keep it very simple. It is licensed per CPU, in other words, per socket of each vSphere host that you wish to protect. Doesn't matter how many VMs that you have out there. So for example, if I have 5 hosts in my cluster, each with 2 CPUs, I would have to have 10 licenses of vSphere. I would also buy 10 licenses of VDP Advanced to protect all of the virtual machines. Again, it doesn't matter how many VMs that are on those hosts there. So very simple licensing. From a scale standpoint, what you will find is VDP Advanced will support roughly 200 VMs per appliance. Now that's based on average size VMs, average data change rate within the VMs, retention policy of around 30 days or so. And each environment is different, so your results may vary one way or the other. But again, roughly 200 VMs per appliance, but you can deploy up to 10 appliances per vCenter. So you can scale this out. I think I see a hand in the far back there. Speak up nice and loud, please.
I was wondering if you could enumerate what an average VM is in terms of the change rate you do. What sort of figures do you use?
Yeah, so that's a good question. The question was, what do I consider to be an average size VM, average change rate, and so forth? I would say an average size VM out there is going to be anywhere from 50 to 80 gig, and we do have data that supports that. Most of that VM being actual data, not zeros. You can deploy, obviously, a VMDK file of 50 gig, but you might only be using 10 gig of that if you put an OS and nothing else on there. We're actually talking about between 50 and 80 gig of actual data that needs to be backed up, in other words. From a change rate standpoint, what we've seen, and also what EMC has verified for us too, since they have a lot of backup products, is that change rate in a typical environment is less than 5%. So anywhere from 2 to 3%, maybe 4 or 5%, but not much more than that. Obviously, certain data is deduplicated better than others. So it just depends on what you're backing up as well. For example, a file server would be deduplicated very well, whereas a database sometimes does not dedupe quite as well as a file server. Or maybe media files do not dedupe as well as a file server as well. So it just depends on what you're backing up as far as the deduplication efficiency that you'll see there, but hopefully that answers your question. And then as far as retention policy, by default, VDP Advanced will put 60 days out there. What we assume with that 200 VMs is probably 30 days, so anywhere between 30 and 60 days, so that's what I consider a quote-unquote average environment. Okay? Same thing with VDP. If you're wondering about that, it is a smaller scale. Again, it's included with vSphere, so you kind of get what you pay for. It's great to test drive the product, but it is a smaller appliance, so you can get roughly 50 VMs per VDP, not VDP Advanced, VDP appliance. So licensing. Wanted to mention that real quick too. If you're wondering how to license that, I already mentioned that. There's the quick slide on it. I think it's time to move on to the demo at this point, yes. So let me switch gears. And what I'm actually going to show you here is very quickly to go through the wizard of deploying VDP Advanced, and then we'll get to the actual interface in the vSphere web client that shows doing backup, recovery, and so forth. Question here? Yeah, hold on one second. The mic's coming to you. There you go.
Does VDP 5.5 support runs against 5.1 vCenter or 5.1 ESX?
Yes, it can. So no problem there. If you want to use 5.5 with vCenter 5.1, it does support that. Just make sure you're using the latest versions of both of those items, patches and so forth. So what I have here is I actually deployed an OVA file. Okay, I didn't want to bore you with the details of doing that. I assume most of us here have already deployed an OVA file. So once that file has been deployed, what will happen then is you will get an interface like this. It's a web-based interface, so I didn't have to install any backup and recovery client or anything special to configure this environment. It starts out with the wizard, and back up. Hit the button too many times. There we go. So what you can see here is I already have the IP address information entered in there. And actually the reason that happened is because I put the DNS host record out there first. That's a best practice. When you go to deploy a VDP or a VDP Advanced appliance, make sure that you have a DNS record out there first. It's been a best practice for many years in a VMware environment to make sure that DNS is properly configured. VDP Advanced is no exception to that. Make sure that you have DNS properly configured with an IP address and a fully qualified domain name ahead of time. Also make sure that both forward and reverse lookup is enabled for this particular host record here. If you did configure that properly, what will happen is this area here will already be populated for you. You simply verify the settings, hit next. I select a time zone here. As I mentioned, I'm from the West Coast over there, so my default is going to be the West Coast, Los Angeles in the United States. VDP credentials. What I'm entering here is simply the root password for the VDP appliance. vCenter registration. Whoops, I need username there. Now let's try. And I made one typo. There we go. Now if I have this set up properly and I put the right password in, I could hit test connection. We'll see if I hit the password correctly. I did. So it verified against vCenter. I go next. And it takes just a few moments here. Here's where I would enter that license key. I already have one VDP Advanced appliance out there, so the license key automatically populates. I hit decode, shows me my licensing information. I hit OK, hit next. Here's where I have a couple of options as well. I can either create new storage. If this is a new VDP Advanced appliance, naturally I'll want to create some new storage for that. Or if by chance I had existing VDP Advanced appliances out there, something happened to the guest OS for that VDP Advanced appliance, I could literally detach the backup data from the old appliance, and then I could select this option here to attach to the new appliance. So again, if something happens with the actual guest OS itself, but my backup data is intact, I can detach it, deploy a new appliance, and add that existing backup data to the new appliance. In this case, I'm going to create new storage. and I have a very small amount of storage in the environment, so I'm actually going to select thin provisioning. I would encourage you to select thick provisioning just for performance reasons. I also have the option here too to either store the backup data with the appliance, so on the same data store, or I can distribute that storage across other data stores if I wish to do that. So there's flexibility there. Again, for simplicity's sake, I'm going to store with the appliance, hit next. Here we can see the virtual CPU and memory allocation, as I mentioned before. 4 virtual CPUs by default, 4 gigs of RAM. If I was deploying more storage other than that half terabyte or 2 terabyte or whatever, let's say I want to go up to 6 or 8 terabyte, I would add additional memory to this particular appliance here. The details for that are included in the admin guide. Quick question?
Are there any limitations on the advanced versus the standard on the size of the storage you can attach in the past older versions that were?
Yes, there is. So the question was, are there limitations as far as the amount of storage I could deploy to VDP versus VDP Advanced? And the answer to that is yes, there is, just like there was with previous versions. With VDP, the version that's included with vSphere, you can go up to 2 terabytes of deduplicated backup data capacity. So you can actually have virtual machines that total more than 2 terabytes in size, but with the deduplication, you can actually store a lot more VMs inside that 2 terabyte appliance. With VDP Advanced, you can go up to 8 terabytes if you choose to use VMDK files to store your backup data. Again, that's per appliance. 8 terabytes of deduplicated backup data is quite a bit there, and I can deploy up to 10 appliances. Or I can scale even further if I use data domain as the back end for those VDP Advanced appliances as well. I'm going to hit next here again, ready to complete. The last thing I'll show you is I have the option of running a storage performance test here when I deploy this appliance. That's a good idea to do that, to make sure your storage can handle the I/O that any backup solution is going to produce. So just make sure you run that. In my case, I know that I have a good fiber channel SAN behind that. I'm not going to bore you with watching that storage performance test go. I'm simply going to click next, hit yes to continue, and then we want to reboot this appliance. It will do that on its own, actually, but I'll go ahead and get it started here. Yep, it's going to take a few moments. So we'll switch back to that one as it's configuring storage. There you can see it's working on the data store. So we'll come back to that. Now, once VDP Advanced has been installed, this is what the user interface looks like. As you can see, it is baked right into the vSphere web client completely. Everything that you need is in the vSphere web client to administer VDP once you have deployed the appliance there. What I'm going to start with, actually, is a backup job. That's probably where most of us will start when we first deploy VDP. As you can see, I have a few jobs already out there. I have a image level backup for my Linux 01 virtual machine. Then I have a couple of application backups as well, one for Exchange and one for SharePoint. In this case, I'm going to start with an image backup. So I go to Backup Actions, click New. And here you can see I have a couple of options, either guest images or applications. As I mentioned, we're going to start with a guest image or an entire virtual machine backup. I also have the option to select individual disks. Maybe there are certain VMs where I do not want to back up the guest operating system, maybe only the data partition of that particular VM. Naturally, I have that capability with VDP Advanced and VDP as a matter of fact. So I'm going to actually drill down just a little bit just to show you what the UI looks like if I want to pick and choose individual VMDK files. I'll go into my production resource pool. I will select Linux 02, which has 2 VMDK files attached to it. I'm just going to back up my data partition here. Here's the options for scheduling. I can do daily, I can do weekly, or monthly backups. 3 different options there. If I wanted to go with weekly, I could of course select the day of the week, or monthly, maybe the first Sunday or Saturday or whatever makes sense. I'm going to go with daily. And as you can see here too, I can change the start time of the backup job, so I can get very granular with my backup job scheduling. Maybe I want to start this particular backup job at 8:11 p.m. and I can absolutely do that for all of the backup jobs. I'll hit next. As you can see, the default retention policy is 60 days. Question in the back here, sir?
Yes, question on the scheduling. Why cannot we have a selection of not to run it automatically for a backup time?
That's exactly what that is. We're going to run that backup job automatically every day.
But I don't want to do that.
What do you want to do?
just manually whenever I want.
Okay, well let me finish creating this job and I'll show you how to run that job manually. In this case, I'm just going to keep this backup data for 15 days. I don't need to keep it around that long. I can also keep till a specific date and time, or I can even do a custom schedule if I want to as well. So maybe I keep daily for 60 days, and maybe I want to keep monthly backups for 8 months, whatever that number might be. Again, I'm just going to do 15 days. I'll hit next. I'll give the job a name. I'll call that one Linux 2 since I already have Linux 1 out there. I hit finish. It'll take just a few moments for that backup job to be created. So we'll wait patiently for that. It's done. And now we can see there's our Linux 2 backup job. If I want to kick that job off manually, I can go up here and I can say backup now. I have two options. I can either back up all of the sources, which backs up all of the virtual machines regardless of the last time they were backed up, or I can select backup only out-of-date sources. And where this might come into play is if I had a virtual machine or two that were missed in the last backup job. A reason that might happen is if you have existing snapshots out there, which could potentially stop that particular VM from being backed up. You should always manage your snapshots properly. We get quite a few calls around that where people leave snapshots out there, and then it causes issues with many backup solutions, not just VDP Advanced. But let's say I figure that out, I clean those snapshots up, and I want to go back and back up just those couple of VMs that were missed the last time. I could select backup only out-of-date sources. In this case, I'm going to select all of them and hit OK. And at that point, my backup job is going to run manually, or I can simply wait until it kicks off at 8:11 p.m. as I scheduled it in the job itself there. Now let's go ahead and take a look at an application backup job. Hit New, Applications. Now I have a couple of options here, full server or selected databases. The full server is kind of misleading because we're not actually backing up the entire server. That's an image level backup. What we're saying when we say full server are all of the databases on that particular server, so all of the application databases. In this case, I want to pick and choose an individual database. So I drill down here into Microsoft SQL servers. And what it's doing right now is it's going out and it's talking to agents that we have already installed on that SQL server or that SharePoint or Exchange server. In this case, I want to back up the SQL Server database for my Virtual Center server. So I drill down further, and here I can see my databases. There's my vCenter database, so I select that. I hit Next. And here are some of the options that you see when you back up a SQL Server database. You can select full, differential, incremental. I can enable multiple streams, for example. Let's say I want to increase, or I say decrease, how long it takes to back up that particular database. I can enable multiple streams there. A variety of things you can do because I have that agent. With solutions that do not have agents for this particular application, I would not be able to do this type of configuration here. I'm going to keep it to a full backup for the sake of time. Hit Next. There's the schedule. I'll keep that default. The rest looks the same. As you can see, it's very simple to set up these backup jobs here. I'll hit Next. I'll give it a name. vCenter database, if I could type correctly. How about that? And finish. And again, you can see it's very easy, very quick to create backup jobs, both for entire virtual machines and for applications out there. Now let's check on our other machine here. Looks like it is going through the reboot process. We'll give it some more time. We're actually going to set up a replication job in a little bit to that particular machine, so we'll just wait for that to continue to work there. What I do want to show you now is the restore part. So we've done backups for a while. How do I do restores? Again, very simple. If I want to do an entire VM restore, I simply look for that VM, and I can filter this list, by the way. If I have a very long list of virtual machines out there, let's say I just want to narrow that list down to my VMs that have the word Linux in it to find my Linux VMs, I could certainly do that. In this case, my list is not very long, so I won't mess with that right now. But I'll show you here that I can drill down to the VMDK level once again. So if I want to restore just one individual VMDK file, I can. In this case, we'll select the entire VM. We'll hit Restore. Hit next. Our restore options will come up. We have the option to restore to the original location. As I mentioned before, if we are rolling back that VM, restoring it to the original location, only the change blocks are going to be restored. So that's going to happen very quick. I also have the option to restore to another location too. So I would select a new location in the vCenter hierarchy. I could select a different data store if I wanted to. I can select to power on that VM after it's been restored, and to disconnect the network interface card if I want to. So many options here when it comes to restore. Now, I'm not going to do a restore at this point in time. We already have a backup job running. I want to make sure things are nice and snappy here, so we're going to hold off on that just for now. Again, it's no fun watching a restore job happen. It's just a little thing that shoots across the screen little by little until that restore job is done. What I do want to show you is an application restore. So again, I can drill down. And in this case, I've already backed up databases in the past. There's an old restore point for my vCenter database. I could simply select that one database and then go through the rest of the process once again. Restore options. Again, because we have that agent out there, we have multiple options to do that restore. Very similar to what I showed you before, though, so I'm not going to go through those details again for the sake of time. We're already 30 minutes into the conversation, and I do want to save time for Q&A, so again, I'm going to try to keep it short here. So I'll switch gears to the backup verification job. I want to show you that as well. As I mentioned before, this is a new feature with VDP Advanced, and it's very easy to set up. What it's doing now is it's going to show me which virtual machines are available for restore rehearsal. I'm going to select Linux 01. I'll hit next. There's where the script goes in. By default, it's already going to boot that virtual machine. It's going to listen for VMware Tools heartbeats to verify the guest OS came online. If I wanted to run a script, I could do that as well. Username, password, and of course, where the location of that particular script is. I would hit next. Destination path, where I want to restore that VM to. So in other words, in the vCenter hierarchy, just restore it to my data center. Schedule looks the same as before. Again, these details are all very similar. As you can see, it's super easy to set this up because all the processes look very similar to each other. Name, Linux, BV for backup verification. I hit next, and that's all there is to it to create a backup verification job. At that point, that backup verification job would run daily because that's the schedule I chose for that particular verification job. The VM would be restored, disconnected from the network. The verification would happen. It would boot the VM, listen for heartbeat. Optionally, it would run an application script if you want it to, and then it would tear that virtual machine down to free up that space for the next time we need to run that particular job. Okay? Reports. I'll show you what comes up in the interface here. If you want to see some of the reporting in there, there are a couple places we can go for this. So first of all, there's a kind of a main screen here, if you will, that shows the appliance status is normal, so everything's working as it should. I've only used about 0.5% of capacity here. I've actually backed up several gigs of data, but thanks to the deduplication, it's deduped that way down, and I'm only using just a little bit of the capacity so far. Integrity check, I'll talk about that in just a few moments, and then I can scroll down a little bit further here, and I can see all of the clients that are available in vCenter that can be backed up by this VDP appliance. You'll see that some of these show never, and that's quite simply because I do not have those VMs as part of a backup job in VDP. If I were to create a backup job and include those, that status would change in there. Excuse me. In this case, I can see my Linux 01 VM again. I can go down further, and I can see additional details down here at the bottom about the backup job, and if I happen to have a backup verification job as well. You can see it here in the lower right-hand corner. So again, lots of details about each VM if you want. The other place you can get reporting information is via email, and I'll show you what that looks like, at least from a configuration standpoint. So I can go in here to configuration, I can hit email, I can edit, send email reports. I would enter the information here. Maybe I want those reports at 7 a.m. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, and Thursday. So during the weekdays, in other words. At that point, I would get a email message that shows the status of the appliance and of each of the backup jobs as well at 7 a.m. every weekday morning. Logging is here after I cancel. There we go. So at a high level, I can see logging in the appliance too. Now, if I need to see more detailed logs, I would actually have to log into the appliance and grab those logs from there. But at a high level, you can see if there's a particular issue. We can see our backup job here, for example. Our Linux 2 backup job completed. So we can see there that that worked as it should, and it did not take too long to do that. There are also additional details about the backup appliance here. So we can see versions. So in this case, I'm running major version 5.5.5.118. That's actually a beta version because we haven't released the product yet. We announced it, but it's not GA. So of course, that version number will change. IP address, we can see the display name, time zone, and I can scroll down just a little bit here too, and I'll show you an example of that deduplication efficiency. I've actually backed up almost 30 gig of data, so 28.3 it looks like. After deduplication though, it's only occupying 2.4 gig of space on my storage out there. So that's roughly between 80 and 90% efficiency, maybe a little bit more than that actually. So yeah, a little bit more than 90%. So very efficient, the variable length segment deduplication that's in the Avamar algorithm, which is also part of VDP Advanced. Any questions on that so far? One here.
Actually, beside the deduplication, is there also a compression?
No, it's just strictly deduplication. Good question, though. And again, because it's so efficient, there's really no need to compress that data. We're only storing that segment one time, and it's variable length as well. It's not a fixed length deduplication. So now I'm going to switch back over to the slides here for a moment. We're going to wait for our other appliance to finish deployment. It's still working out there. We can see it's about halfway done if you look in the upper right-hand corner. We're waiting on that second appliance to come up so I can configure replication. So what I'm going to do is go back to the slides, and I want to show you some of the items that are underneath the hood, so to speak. And I lost my mouse cursor on this particular. So I will. Give me just a second. There we go. So let's talk about that replication just for a minute before we set that particular replication job up. As I mentioned before, both VDP and VDP Advanced have replication. However, the limitation with VDP is it can only be replicated to EMC Avamar. Again, VDP is the version that's included with vSphere, so you get that at no additional charge if you want to test drive the VDP solution. What we see some customers may be thinking about is, especially some of the smaller environments out there, is using VDP since it's included, but I still need to move my backup data off-site. If that's the case, you can replicate to EMC Avamar probably at a service provider. For example, SunGard has already announced that they are going to very soon offer that service where if you have VDP in your environment and you wish to move your backup data off-site, you'll be able to do that because they will offer a backup target as a service using EMC Avamar within their data center, which of course, as I mentioned just a moment ago, VDP can replicate to that. VDP Advanced can replicate to both EMC Avamar and another VDP Advanced appliance. What's very nice about this is the data is encrypted before it's sent across the wire. As I mentioned before, we want to make sure that not only is it very efficient for sending data across a WAN, but also that it's secure as well, so that we don't have to deal with the issues of lost personal information or social security numbers or anything like that. So it's encrypted before it's sent across the wire, and it's deduplicated at both the source and the target. So we're only sending data that's different between both of those across the wire. In other words, there's no need to have WAN acceleration out there because the Avamar deduplication engine that's in VDP Advanced is so efficient. So no need to invest in additional technologies such as WAN acceleration or compression or encryption or anything like that. It's already built in, so it's very efficient there. There are the two topologies that I mentioned before. With VDP Advanced, you can go between VDP Advanced appliances or VDP Advanced to EMC Avamar. Or you can get very fancy with this too. If you want something a little more complex or a little more comprehensive, I think would be the better word, you can actually set up a complex topology like this. For example, the VDP Advanced appliance in the lower left-hand corner there is actually replicating backup data to two other sites. In contrast, this one over here closest to me is receiving data from two sites. So you can do one to many, you can do many to one to one, whatever makes sense for your environment. I know some customers have asked, hey, I want to make sure that I never lose that backup data, so I literally want to replicate that to do two different places, and all you would have to do is set up two replication jobs, same data if you want to, and just schedule those at different times to go to two different appliances at two different sites. So again, very robust, very mature replication technology thanks to the Avamar stuff underneath the hood there. From an efficiency standpoint, I'll show you why there's no need for WAN acceleration, no need for compression. It's already encrypted, all of that stuff. We start out with virtual machines on the left-hand side over there. You can see that the change blocks have the green color around the block there. Of course, with any backup solution, it's going to work with change block tracking. All of the other ones out there do as well. VDP Advanced does. So in the next section over, you can see that we've grabbed just the change blocks, but then those get deduplicated within the virtual appliance. Okay, so we have A, B, and C at our site at the source over there, but since the A and B data segments are already in our target, the only thing we have to replicate is that C data segment. So again, very efficient. It utilizes both change block tracking and deduplication at both the source and the target in order to make that replication extremely efficient. Again, no need for WAN acceleration, encryption, compression, any of that stuff. Even if you have a very small WAN link between your sites, you're going to see some nice results with this particular technology here. So I'm going to switch back over, and I still don't think that my appliance is fully deployed, but what I can do, as it takes a few moments for the reboot, what I can do is at least show you how to set up a replication job here. I have no jobs currently, but I need to create one. So just like I would do a backup job, I go up here to Replication Job Actions. I hit New. And here I have a couple of options to start with. I can either select all of the clients, so in other words, the backup data for all of the clients that I want to replicate, or if I want to be more granular, I can go in here and I can select just my important virtual machines or my important application data if I want to, whatever makes sense there. We'll just do a couple of VMs, keep it simple. We'll hit Next. Now the next thing it asks me for is which backup types do I want to replicate. And what I'm talking about there is when VDP does a backup job, it will tag that restore point with a certain tag. For example, daily backups get tagged with a daily tag. Maybe I just want to replicate my daily backups and my monthly backups. If that's the case, I can pick and choose those. I can limit the number if I want to. I can either do all of them, or I can limit the number to, let's say, 5 backups. Or I can do date restrictions too. So daily and monthly backups, a maximum of 5 that have occurred in the last 7 days. So again, very granular selection of the backup data that you want to send across the wire. I hit Next. I select my destination. Now again, the interface looks the same in VDP as VDP Advanced because both solutions will do replication, VDP to Avamar only, VDP Advanced to VDP Advanced or Avamar. In this case, I would simply put the host name of that Avamar grid or of that VDP appliance in here, the username, a password. At that point, I could hit Verify Authentication to make sure that I entered that information correctly. I'll get a success back from that. Like I said, my appliance is not fully deployed yet, so I'm going to skip that step, but I think you get the idea. And just as you would imagine, like the backup jobs and so forth, the interface is very simple, very easy. Daily, in this case I'm going to do a weekly. And I'm going to wait for all my backups to occur first, so I'm actually going to push this replication job until early in the morning the next day. So we'll do that on Monday morning. Hit Next. Retention. Here's the other thing. Now, as I mentioned with a backup job, by default it's 60 days. I put, I think, 15 days in my backup job. Maybe I want to keep that backup data locally for just 15 days like I configured for that particular backup job, but for retention at off-site location, maybe I want that to be a lot longer. And I can certainly do that with VDP Advanced. So I can either keep the existing backup retention, or I can change it here. Maybe I want to keep my backup, my daily backups for 180 days, and maybe my monthly backups for 12 months. So I can be very selective in when that retention policy expires those restore points at both the local backup location and at the replicated offsite area. Hit Next, give it a name, and that's it. That's all it takes to configure replication with VDP and VDP Advanced. Any questions on that? Yes, sir.
Which versions of Avamar do you support?
Which versions of Avamar? I believe it's 6.0 and higher. I'd have to consult the documentation. Did I see, is that correct back there? Yes. Thank you. 6.0 and higher. Any other questions on replication? Yes, sir, in the back.
What kind of license do we need on the replication side?
What kind of license do you need on the replication side? For, so yeah, you would have a licensed VDP Advanced appliance on the recovery side, but there's still some I guess I'll give you a behind-the-scenes look there. Currently, the way the product sits right now in beta, you would have to license that VDP Advanced appliance, but we're kind of pushing back on that a little bit because just like Site Recovery Manager, you don't need licensing for SRM at the recovery site. I kind of think it should be the same way for VDP Advanced, so we're still working through that. So I can't answer that definitively other than what I know about what I'm working with right now. So currently you would have to license at least one host over there, but I think we're going to overturn that. So stay tuned on that front. Great question though. Thanks. Any other questions out there? Yes, sir, over here. I can barely see the hands. I apologize. The lights are bright.
If I do replication through data domain, is VDP 55 Advanced aware of replication through that domain? Can I make it aware of that domain replication?
Yes, you can. As a matter of fact, if you have the data domain replication license, you could actually do backups at both sites and then replicate cross sites if you want to with data domain. And correct back there again? We've got an EMC gentleman in the room who support me on the data domain and Avamar side of the house.
Can you show after how to configure a data domain destination, a data domain media destination for backup?
I'm sorry, what was that again?
Can you show in the demo how to configure data domain appliance as a destination?
Yeah, it's very simple actually. I'll show you that. We'll go off.
Even after that.
What's that?
Even after replication.
Yeah, we'll go off script here just for a second, and I will show you what that looks like because again, it's very simple. At least to set up the target. Let me switch over to the VDP Configure interface, and that's actually a good segue because I'll show you a few other items in here as well. It'll take just a moment to load because this data is coming halfway around the world via web browser. But again, that's the beauty of VDP and VDP Advanced. You don't have to install clients anywhere to manage this. It's all through the vSphere web client or directly from a web browser. So what I'm doing here is I'm logging into the VDP Configure user interface. And this is actually served up by the appliance itself. Again, it's a web-based application. After I've deployed the appliance, you saw me walk through the wizard earlier. Once I have done that wizard and I've rebooted the appliance, here's what it looks like now. I log in with that root password. It'll take just a few moments as it does a health check here. And I'll do a time check. Yep, we're almost out of time. I want to make sure we get to any additional Q&A. But here's what the interface looks like for VDP Configure. Again, it's just a web browser. I can see the status of the various services there. If for some reason VMware support is working with me, and by the way, that's one of the other nice things about VDP Advanced, is one number to call for support there. If you think about that, it's a VMware product. So instead of maybe having to open 2 or 3 support tickets with other backup solutions out there, we can keep things nice and simple once again using VDP Advanced. Just call VMware support. If they happen to tell us that we need to stop or start a service, we would do it right there. The question was around data domain. Where is that configured? We actually moved to the storage tab. So here we get information about capacity utilization, where my backup data is being stored, and then I would go up here to action, add data domain, and again a very simple configuration here. I simply point to that data domain appliance, ddboost username, password. I would hit next, configure SNMP information, and that's it. Now, as far as the replication piece, I don't know, can you speak just a little bit on what the replication looks like at the data domain level?
The replication goes from, hello. The replication goes from data domain to data domain. So when you configure VDP Advanced to go to data domain, on the remote side, if you have VDP Advanced to data domain, it'll replicate between data domains. So it won't go back up to VDP Advanced. It'll go right from data domain to data domain.
Perfect.
Does that make sense?
Everybody get that? So in other words, when I configure a replication job with VDP Advanced, it will talk with data domain and actually do the replication. That is no longer the case with DirecttoHost Emergency Restore. I would simply select the VM, click on that, hit restore, and again, a very similar wizard would pop up there where it would show me, hey, where do you want to restore that to? And you would hit go, and at that point it would restore that vCenter VM there. So very simple to do. A couple caveats with this though. Keep in mind that you can only restore to the host where the VDP Advanced appliance is running. So you can't pick and choose any host out there, just the host that the VDP Advanced appliance is running on. To me, that's not a big deal because once I have restored that vCenter virtual machine, I can then use vMotion once vCenter is back up to move things around again as I need to. So not a showstopper, just something to be aware of. We only have about 8 or 9 minutes left, so I'm going to actually stop the demos here and see if there are any questions or anything out there that we can answer at this point since we're almost out of time. Yes, sir, go ahead. Actually, wait for the mic if you will.
Is there any way to back up the backup server?
Any way to back up the backup server itself? No, not really, but there's no need to because we have replication out there. If you want to protect the backup data, which is really what it's all about, you would simply use a replication job to replicate that to another VDP Advanced appliance. And what will happen is that that secondary appliance, the restore points, will look very similar to local backup jobs. So if you want to do a restore from either one, you could do that, and the process is going to be identical. Next question?
The selection process for the VM I would like to back up, we saw it in the wizard. Can you also go straight to the VM and right-click, I want to have this protected? Like in the vCenter view here, can I go to the VM directly and right-click the VM or go to a menu inside the VM to select it for backup?
You cannot for backup, but you can for restore. So the question was, can I just right-click on a VM in there and initiate a backup of that particular VM? You would actually need to add it in the VDP UI to the backup job, but as far as restore is concerned, there is the option to right-click on a VM to start a restore process to roll that VM back to a previous point.
So also I see on the VM then that it is backed up. If I have the restore option, there is a little check mark or something telling me that this VM is being backed up?
No check mark per se, but that's a great feature request. We've had a couple of people ask about that. We're thinking about that already. Great question. Yes, sir.
Are there a possibility to schedule with an external scheduler?
Not today. There's no way to do an external scheduler. In other words, you would have a scheduler for each VDP Advanced appliance. It's internal there. There's no scheduler to do a bunch of appliances at once. And I realize that's a limitation for some folks, but keep in mind this product really is for the small to medium-sized environment. So maybe a few hundred VMs, anywhere from a few dozen VMs to a few hundred VMs, 500, 800 VMs, something like that. So not too difficult to manage in that size environment, but if you have a much larger environment, I could see where a central scheduler would be very beneficial. And that's where I would encourage you to look to the full-blown Avamar solution to do something like that.
Yes, just to touch back on the licensing, will this product be available through the VSPP program?
We are in conversations around that. I believe so, but don't hold me to that yet. So stay tuned. We're having conversations right now around that.
For a VM, maybe, or?
Not sure. Not sure what the licensing model is going to look like from a partner perspective.
Yeah, I'm thinking about using this for a branch office. Will I need a license for each socket in a data center or a cluster, or how will that work?
See, the licensing is simply by each host that you wish to protect. So if you have hosts at a remote site, and maybe there are a dozen VMs running out there, you would have to license the host or hosts that those dozen VMs are running on, those 12 VMs in other words. So yeah, you would have to license it out there as well. That's a great use case though, even for larger environments. You know, I talked just a moment ago about how this is really for a small and medium-sized environment. I'm sure that some of you out there may have, you know, maybe many hundreds or even thousands of virtual machines, so you're thinking, well, this is probably not for me, but I encourage you to think again, if you have a remote or a branch office location, maybe it's a store, maybe it's a satellite office, whatever the case might be, that maybe has just a few hosts and maybe 50 VMs or something like that, or even 10 VMs. That's a great opportunity for VDP Advanced as well, because again, that's considered a small environment. And then if you have a larger backup solution back at your main office, such as Avamar, you could back up with VDP Advanced at that remote site and then replicate that backup data back to the main site, so that way you have all-site storage for that backup data.
Okay, just another question, please. Can I have another one?
Just one. No, I'm kidding. Go ahead.
Just back on the branch office, is it possible to have like a profile compliance for a cluster. So if someone creates a VM, and I can get a red check mark to make sure I back that up, or?
So there's no way to see in the user interface if someone creates a VM that it's not protected, but what you can do is put more of an operational practice in place for that. Because you can actually select not just individual VMs when you do a backup job, but you can also select objects, such as a folder or a resource pool. So if you have a branch office out there, you would create a resource pool and then have users deploy VMs to that resource pool. And by virtue of backing up the resource pool, anytime a VM is added to that resource pool, it automatically gets backed up going forward.
Okay.
Okay?
So you said it's it was announced, but it's not released yet. So what are we looking at for release date?
So it was announced this week. I can't give exact dates on when we're going to release it, but sometime this quarter is the current plan now. So by the end of the year, in other words. Now, whether that's tomorrow or December 31st, I'm not sure, but sometime this quarter. Question back here in the corner, it looks like.
What about backup with raw device mappings?
What, I'm sorry, you'll have to
with
repeat.
RDM, raw device mappings?
Yeah, it does support virtual RDM, not physical RDM though, because since it's a VADP solution, vSphere APIs for data protection solution, just like many other backup solutions out there that utilize those APIs, if it's a physical RDM, you cannot snapshot that physical RDM, so therefore we would not be able to back that up. Now, that being said, if you have an application that is residing on a physical RDM that's part of a VM, say SQL Server for example, and you want to do agent-based backup, you could do that.
And if you do a full restore of that VM, will those RDMs be mapped again, or will
yes,
they?
It will restore that data back.
Also
I think it's to a VMDK file, though. I think there's a little bit of a catch there. From EMC, can you help me out on that one there? If I restore virtual RDM, is it restored back as a VMDK file? I think. See, I'm not sure on that either. I haven't actually walked through that yet with the latest product. So good question. You stumped the presenter on that one. I'm not sure. Another question? We got time for probably one or two more. It's almost on the hour.
Just really quickly, the can I upgrade 5.1 to? I'm not even sure what the last version was of VDP. But is there an upgrade pass?
Yes. So if you are currently running VDP 5.1 or VDP Advanced 5.1 and you want to upgrade to the latest version of either of those, you can certainly do that in place, which will preserve the existing backup data in that appliance. Question right here.
A quick question. Do I need to license all the hosts within the vSphere, or I can be selective, a couple of hosts that, let's say, run very critical things?
You could be selective, and what you would want to be cautious of, though, is if you have DRS enabled, for example, and those critical VMs are vMotion onto a host that is not licensed, that will create problems for backup and recovery. But you can get creative and use DRS affinity rules. If you want to keep it simple, I would license all of the hosts in that cluster. That way you can turn on DRS fully automated, let things move around as they need to, and then it can be backed up regardless of which host is on. Because quite honestly, the solution is not that expensive. Again, we brought as an enterprise class solution, and we brought it down to the small and medium-sized environment with a comparable price point as well. So to license a few more hosts in your cluster is really an incremental cost. I would just keep it simple and do that. Sir?
A question on encryption. Do you encrypt both the wired data and the repository files on the replica server?
So the repository is not actually encrypted, but since it's deduplicated segments, it would be extraordinarily difficult for somebody to be able to reconstruct a virtual machine from those various segments and hashes and so forth that are out there. So there's no need to encrypt that because we want to keep it fast as well. So we don't put the additional overhead of encryption on the source and on the target, the data source himself, only on the encryption that's being, the traffic that's being sent across the network, in other words. Does that make sense?
Cloud, you know.
Can you repeat that, please?
I was thinking about sending this data to the cloud and have it encrypted on in the destination.
Well, the destination for VDP Advanced would either be another VDP Advanced appliance, or you mentioned the cloud, so I'm thinking Avamar at a service provider. And if it's Avamar, it's the same type of backend. It's going to have that dedupe data store that's at the other site there. And again, if somebody were to get that data, it would be extraordinarily difficult for them to actually make it usable without doing a restore. Okay? So really no need to encrypt that data at either site there, just across the wires where the encryption is required. Is that all the questions? One more here. This will probably be the last one.
File level recovery. Is it possible both for Windows and Linux?
It is possible. I apologize. I actually ran out of time. I wanted to make sure we got to everybody's questions more importantly. So I didn't get a chance to show file level restore, but I'll just run you through that very quickly. So it's web-based. No need to install a backup client in the VM. And what's nice is that means an end user could do file level restore. What I mean by end user would be a guest operating system administrator or perhaps an application owner. And they would log on to the file level restore interface with administrative credentials. They would select a restore point, and at that point they could go in either on a Linux machine or on a Windows machine, and they can pick and choose individual files and folders to restore. They select the destination and hit go, and it restores those files to wherever they said they wanted those files or folders to be restored to. So to answer your question, yes, both Linux and Windows is supported, but keep in mind with Linux, a lot of folks do not install web browsers on their Linux servers. So the workaround for that would maybe to have a Linux workstation sitting out there with a web browser installed, with Flash installed, just like you would for Windows, and then that way you can file level restore from one machine to another, which also requires base center permissions, by the way. But it is possible to do that. Does that answer your question? Probably a lot more info than you wanted, right? But I wanted to make everybody aware of the file level restore. So I think we're out of time here. That's going to do it for me. I hope you found this session extremely valuable. If you did, please leave lots of good feedback, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.